it's up to you who wants to answer, but we talk about stakeholder cooperation. My first question would be, like, based on your experience and also on the presentations of the other, what would be a first step to start? I think, like, we saw different projects in different phases. Sometimes there was already a freight partnership, sometimes there wasn't. So what would be a first step? Is a project a good first step? Or can you have your view on that?
Yeah, I think we all discuss a bit that starting by having the right stakeholders and establishing a group of people with the local authority, and I'm already looking to Tanya because she is one of the best examples. In Copenhagen, they have this group that's freight network that they meet regularly. So it's not only for a project, it's for the entire goal of the sustainability of the city, and it's with industry partners and with the local, and it's a space that they can all share everything all the time, and they meet frequently. So I think the first step would be to start creating this group of the relevant people to be there, the key players that should actually start discussing so that you can move faster.
Okay, project could be also start for this type of initiatives, but what I think that we should also have in mind is the continuity after the end of this project. It could be, we have the context of a good start, a good beginning, but what we are missing is how all these things could be released and be implemented in the actual environment. There are a lot of workshops, a lot of interaction among various stakeholders, but sometimes what is missing is doing. And you can also learn by doing and implementing things. So we have small plans, small pilots, and release them on an actual case. This is, I think, that we should do in order to persuade then other people to follow this direction.
Yes, I agree also. And one problem we have, for example, in success, it's the follow-up of the success project itself, because we created a team for 3 years. And okay, the idea also is to continue or not to stop, let's say, the collaboration we were able to create. So it's one challenge that we have today.
And what we actually saw as one of the key experiences of the Living Lab is that the stakeholder cooperation, in order to last and to continue longer, that the project or whatever, it should really add value to all the stakeholders. So if you are able to show what is an added value to be in my network and what you can get extra on it, that has a chance to last longer than the duration of the specific project.
Yeah, from the point of an administration, I would say a project, an European project, could be a good starting point to work on an issue like city logistic. But I fully agree that after the project ends, there must be a sustainability when we think of stakeholder groups, which were formed during the project, that should go on, and that is our task, I would say, as an administration, to continue such processes then. Yeah.
I think your question was the first step. So where to start from? Living Lab is a very good example, but knowledge of the phenomenon. So monitoring of the data, monitoring of the flow, monitoring. Living Lab should be a place where you share your data. Then if you know how also the logistics flows are evolving, then you can find the solutions and propose pilot projects that are viable, that are fitted to the context where you're working. The difficulty also that we had was to collect the data and to know what is matchable in a project. So this is the way, if you want if the collaboration is our target. If collaboration is our target, I think the most important thing is knowledge and monitoring of the phenomenon. Yeah, this is.
I'd like to go to Tanya.
I totally agree, because when we put up the freight network in the city of Copenhagen, the first thing I did was actually going out and have interviews with the key actors that we were inviting into the group. None of them said that it was fantastic that we were a part of Novelog. They actually didn't care about that. For them, they wanted to have an ongoing dialogue and not only to be a part of a project. So if I had decided that we only would have the freight network going on for the project period, it have not been a success. So for them it was really important that we went into the freight network and it's an ongoing thing.
So maybe that's one of the things that we have to learn from these projects, that it's not only that we present the results and show the amount of CO2 that was reduced in a pilot, but also the longer lasting relations or engagements. And that's like my next question. It's like, do you have ideas on how to achieve this long-term engagement? You talked a bit about contracts, but do you have an idea on how to set it up or how to sustain relations with the stakeholders, and what you can add? Should it be from the public, that the public authorities that set it up, or can it also be from a more private, like the construction side? And I would like to start with you.
I think it's mainly a question of leadership. Maybe it's to have leaders. Okay, we don't need to have that everybody is a leader, but at least to have some people to continue the actions that we launch during the European projects. So it can be the private sector, it can be also the public actors. I think it depends on the case. But I think, yes, we need to have some leadership, or maybe to create some environment like clusters, like, I don't know, specific networks. But to have, let's say, a legal, how can I say, environment to be able to have a continuity. So it can be, for example, a cluster or something like that, to be sure that we can work with different partners on a long term.
In the long term, what you need first is clear objective and continuity in this. So clear objective, clear regulation. So the regulation must be targeted to have this objective realized. So first, if we look at from the public regulator point of view, this is the key point. And if you have this target, it can be a medium to long term target, and the clear regulation in steps, and also incentivizing something, for example, for the renewal of the fleet, and for incentive to have load factor optimized, and so this is the point, is to have a continuity and clear regulation for in all the cities. And this is also for the sector, for example, of construction, but not only.
And I think we can also think about different stakeholder cooperation strategies. There is no one way that fits one city. So this can be just different forms, like 2 forums per year where you involve really wide stakeholder range, where you communicate on targets, try to discuss. And then at the parallel, you have more regular meetings with the front runners, or with a really group of dedicated people with whom you discuss concrete measures. This can also be working groups with representatives of the stakeholders. And currently, with all the stakeholder cooperation forms that we looked in the City Lab and also in our follower city, actually the problem that we saw, that if you have a front runner group who want really to help you, to contribute, to move forward together with the city. But it's very hard sometimes to involve all these small companies who are actually really the actual stakeholders in the city logistics. So there also should be a reflection behind how you can interest all these different stakeholders to take part in the stakeholder cooperation frameworks and platforms.
I would like to continue on the point that you made on regulation, and I would like to ask the cities here. Is that a good start, or would you say it's better to discuss first, or is it a good start to actually, like Ian said yesterday, if they're not shouting, the regulation is not hard enough, and if they're shouting, yeah, then it's a good start to discuss, basically. Is regulation such a trigger, or do you have other ideas on that?
Of course, you have to think about the balance of carrot and stick, like it was mentioned yesterday. But I would suggest not to start with regulations, because most important is to set up a dialogue process with the main target groups. And what I'd like to add to your last question is, for me, as an from the municipal administration, it's also important to ask how I get an issue on the political agenda, because when it's on the agenda, I can act and I can gather such a dialogue framework, yeah, and dialogue group. That's, of course, for us in the administration, a very big point at the end. Yeah.
I didn't mean a top-down regulation, but a shared regulation with the stakeholders. Otherwise, it cannot be successful.
One point that you mentioned is that stakeholder collaboration can be that broad that you even, like the fact that you collaborate with private partners as well, also helps you in collaboration with the voted politicians that you there behind you. Okay. And I have one final question, and that's about communication, because one of the things is communicating to the partners, to the yeah. Do you have ideas on how to communicate, in which way? What helps, or does it really depend on the type of stakeholder collaboration you have? Yeah.
Communication, okay, we have various ways of communication, but what it comes out, because we have a lot of workshops, a lot of things, we have repeated this discussion a couple of times during the past in other conferences, but what it seems that miss at the end of the day is that we cannot implement what we discuss. People we discuss, but it seems that some of us cannot be heard, and cannot what we discuss be materialized. So we need not that much, at least from my point of view, to give emphasis on the communication part, but on materializing at least 2 points of what has been discussed on a common agreed view objective that I mentioned before. Enrico, is critical in order to engage people and feel that they have a win-win relationship by participating in projects, by participating in workshops. So more, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that Christian also mentioned. It has to be somehow in the political agenda, because if it's not, they also can't act. So I think it's good if this type of stakeholders platform, whatever we call it, if they are led by the public, because they also are the partner that can actually put something ongoing, and then the privates can just manifestate whatever they would like to see as well.
I have a final comment or question also, because like from this discussion and also the presentation, what we see is that there are more results coming from the projects than we present, basically. And I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of projects that were running in city logistics. Often it says we did a lot of pilots and it failed here and it failed there. and somehow we are not really able to present the success of these kind of failures in building relations or continuing in other ways. Do you have an idea how we can actually present these kind of achievements in a way that it's not looked at in the end of a project, okay, they didn't have a good pilot, so now they try to come up with some results that are good. So it's not like a greenwashing idea, but actually showing that the long-term results of these kind of projects can be materialized in a way. Do you have an idea on that, how to do that? I don't, so that's why I ask you.
One idea would be to put the separated projects into a larger framework of a strategy at the end. Yeah, you participate as a city, for instance, in an EU project, and at one point this project ends, and then it would be good or ideal to keep your stakeholder group on the local level together, and that could be the starting point for a new idea or a new concept then, yeah. That is how we try to do it at least in Graz. Yeah.
And actually the Living Lab setup, this is all about it, because yeah, we are there speaking about cycles, but this also can be a project idea that you learn from what you, what your results are. And if this is not really exactly successful, you're actually always looking at your long-term goal, how this knowledge really contribute to my goal, how can I make it different, with which additional people I need to talk, or is maybe from this cycle a new idea which is being bold, which now is better placed to implement within a Living Lab, and still you look at your long-term goal and common ambition. So this way you also learn from something which is maybe not straightforward considered successful.
And I think it's, I agree with what has been said. I think it's a question also of strategy, and we have to be aware that the strategy, it's a long term. As we said before, there is no quick win. I don't believe we can, after 1 or 2, 3 years, we cannot reach a perfect situation. So it's a very long term, let's say, improvement process. So we have to have a clear goal, a clear strategy, and even if we fail sometimes, we can learn a lot from it, but we have to accept that, okay, we have to go step by step, that it can be very, very, very long. If I take the example of the construction sector, as we said before, we had no increase of the productivity for 50 years. We cannot change everything after 3, 4, 5 years. So it will be a very long-term process. So we need to have a fixed strategy, and we need to be all together leaders to be sure that we are engaging the people on the long term.
With that, so long-term objective and using the projects actually to achieve these long-term projects would be very good. And I'd like to thank you all for your contribution in this session. So I would say a big hand for the presenters.